Welcome to On the Chain.
Some really good news. We've been hearing about it for a while, since January, when the red team assumed the control of the House of Representatives in Congress. So financial services, the GOP on Twitter put this out. New chairman Patrick McHenry and also French Hill released a digital asset market structure proposal. And the idea of this is unprecedented joint effort to provide clarity to the digital asset ecosystem. And let's go here to check out the bill here. And it says the discussion draft is the first step towards delivering on Republicans' commitment to develop clear rules of the road for digital asset ecosystems, said Chair McHenry. Our goal is to strike the appropriate balance between consumer protection and encouraging responsible innovation. This is the product of the unprecedented joint effort between the House Financial Services and Agricultural Committees, which gives us a better shot at striking a nice, fair balance, or they should say the balance, and encourage stakeholders and market participants to provide constructive feedback to help us improve the legislation.
So Chip, here, I'm going to bring this up because I think this is the actual draft notice that they published. And here's what's interesting. So there's two key things here in this legislation that will help improve. And what Chairman McHenry is doing is vital for the ecosystem. So here we go. So this over here, classification as a security versus a commodity. And this is where they're going to be removing some of the powers of the SEC and giving them to the CFTC. But here, the act builds on the current exemption regime for the offer and sale of digital asset pursuant to an investment contract, including a disclosure regime to address the potential risk associated with digital assets. Under this exemption, digital asset issuers will need to demonstrate that their digital assets operate on a decentralized network and fulfill certain fit-for-purpose disclosure requirements. So there's two things already important here that, as we're trying to gain clarity to the space, something that Gary Gensler is unable to do as the chair of the SEC. He doesn't have the power to draft legislation. He can comment on existing legislation. He says things are clear. This draft bill right now to have a digital asset issuer demonstrate that they're on a decentralized network, I think, number one, that's relatively easy to do. Number two, the question is fit for purpose disclosure. What is the certain fit for purpose? We'll find out. The act specifies that a digital asset can be considered a digital commodity if certain conditions are met. This would be determined by the network being functional and considered decentralized. The act includes definitions for a decentralized network and a functional network, and provides a certification process under which a digital asset issuer may certify to the SEC that the network on which the digital asset relates is decentralized. The SEC may object to the certification if the SEC determines the certification is inconsistent with the act, but must provide a detailed analysis of its reasons for doing so. And this is before we get into regulating the SEC. But Chip, I think on its face, just this presentation, the language, the way they're drafting it starts making sense.
But I'm troubled a little bit by the second paragraph, where it says, did I lose it?
It's right here.
Okay, so yeah, the part where it says the SEC, well, even that sentence above where it says digital issuer may certify to the SEC that the network on which the digital assets relates is decentralized, but the SEC may object to the certification if the SEC determines the certification is inconsistent with the act. And right there is where I find a big problem, because you can always find something wrong. You're going to find something. I don't think the SEC has any. How are you going to object to if someone demonstrates it and say, like, well, no, it's not decentralized. It's a he said, she said type of thing. Like, well, no, it is. But it is because there's no, it operates without any sort of human intervention. We don't have anything to do with it. Like, you could really easily, when you think about Ripple, yeah, okay, well, what happens? Well, yeah, you have a bunch of nodes, and if somebody puts an amendment and Ripple has like a 4% vote towards that, and they vote yes, and they say, like, what do you want? Well, we want to burn 50% of the XRP, burn the escrow, Ripple can't object to it. I mean, if there's enough support in the network, it's decentralized. That's the whole point of it. So decentralization comes in a lot of forms. The bottom line is it cannot be. This is where I kind of think you get into a weird area with Ethereum, because there is a lot of sort of control over what happens, especially this new last update they did within the last couple of months, is that requires some control, and it's not totally decentralized.
So what I'm thinking here, as long as the act itself spells out the definition of a decentralized network, right, and puts the key points that you have to that you can apply as sort of a test. Let's call it a Howey test sort of scenario, where you have certain pillars, and as long as you meet the criteria, then you're decentralized. And if the SEC steps in and they decide they want to object to your certification, and they say, we think that you're not decentralized because of this, I like the idea they have to provide a detailed analysis. So they're not putting the onus back on the applying party, because the applying party has already filled out their application for certification, and they've said, here's why we're decentralized. And now the SEC says, why object? Okay, well, why do you object? Let me explain in detail, not just kind of some, hyperbole over it, but explain in detail why you think it's not decentralized. And that at least allows for a discussion. But I think, Chip, here's the next step that really changes things. And this is where they are taking away from some of the power of the SEC. But, Chip, I think that this act, in conjunction with Warren Davidson's act of removing the chair position and having an actual SEC commission that votes on this instead of the chair making determination on this. Because right now, Gary Gensler, he's like a Gestapo commandant, right? And he's just making he doesn't care what the board says, what the commissioners say. He's going to say whatever he wants to say, detrimental, not detrimental. He could care less, on the fallout. And that's bad. That's bad form. And that's what Warren Davidson was addressing. But in this case, so here we have regulation of SEC intermediaries. The act would enable registration of digital asset trading platforms as an alternative trading system, or an ATS. It would prohibit the SEC from denying a trading platform from an exemption to operate as an ATS on the basis that the platform trades digital assets. And that's one of the things that Gary Gensler, I think he's pretty adamant that he wants to make it more difficult for trading platforms if they're trading crypto asset. The act also requires the SEC to modify its rules to allow broker dealers to custody digital assets if they meet certain requirements. We don't know what those requirements are yet. Additionally, the act would require the SEC to write rules to modernize certain regulations for digital asset. I don't know. I agree with that part of it. So we're going to make a law, then we're going to let them write the rules.
Yeah, that's first of all, anything only Congress writes the rules. So I think it's worded kind of pretty wonky, but the whole idea, what's key here is the fact that modernizing what we have right now is 1933, 1934 legislation on top of the Howey test, which is 1946, 47, whenever that happened. And now this is saying that right now, whereas we're not going to pretend that a digital asset is going to be regulated the same as, let's say, a stock or another type of a security, because they're defining the fact that digital assets are not the same, and having these alternative trading system is defining exactly what it is. And then the regulation of the CFTC, where they're talking about, creates a digital commodity exchange framework that's similar to an existing exchange framework in the Commodity Exchange Act for designated contract markets and swap execution facilities. So a registered DCE would be able to comply with the requirements and within the act and certain longstanding CEA core principles, as well as CFTC regulations. Includes the monitoring of trading activity, prohibition of abusive trading practices, kind of the normal stuff that goes along with that, the minimal capital requirements, just so to make sure that it's on the up and up. But what I don't like about this is still, because it's not a security, there's no reason to have this SEC anywhere involved in this, which is the problem I have with this bill. And it's like, you want to voice the opinion? Great. Come on. French Hill, come on the chain. Patrick McHenry, come on the chain. Let's debate this. But let's not talk about like the SEC. If we're talking about something that has nothing to do with securities, why would we have the one regulatory body that only regulates securities? It's a bad move. And then that line in there about, well, they're going to write rules. No, they're not going to write anything. And are they going to object to the decentralization? I don't even know what decentralization is, Jeff. So while in a lot of ways this is a positive move, it does have some wonky components to it, which some might refer to as loopholes for the SEC to get back in and be able to wreak havoc, Jeff.
No, I agree with that loophole. I like the term loopholes because that's exactly what they're putting into the bill. They're allowing it to be, and this is just a draft kind of outlining what their objective is, what they would like to see. Obviously, they have to come through and they have to put the verbiage together. There's a lot in here, and there's a lot that probably needs to come out of here. And so, and you bring up such a solid point. Like, so you apply, there needs to be a joint board of the SEC and CFTC to sit down and review the application. Because if you don't have a joint commission between the SEC and the CFTC, what I don't like here is that it says here, the act would also permit certain entities to duly register with the CFTC and SEC to be permitted to facilitate transactions in multiple types of assets. Now, I get this idea. This makes sense that if you have different assets, maybe you have one that's a security, maybe one that's a commodity, you want to go down that path. But how do you know right from the get-go, right? If we're applying for it, here's our project. We're going to submit for the certification. We think it's decentralized. We think it's not a non-security. Why would the SEC be the first point of contact with the project and not the CFTC? It doesn't make sense.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.